American beef numbers right now are at basically like a 50-year low. We're a beef country. That's what the main source of protein has been for us since basically the founding of the country. So we're at this kind of crossroads right now where for the first time, we're just not producing a whole lot of beef. Probably the biggest mistake that our society is making right now is they're just not offering men challenges, which is what men thrive on. This thought process that if I remove all the difficult things from your life, that somehow your life is going to be better. But that's not the case for either of the sexes necessarily. We thrive on challenges.
Sean, what's happening, brother? Welcome to Austin.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
Got you back in Texas, your home state, right?
Got me back here. You brought me to a place where I could get a good workout in this morning. Like, you brought me coffee. Like, life's good, man.
Dude, well, we had to thank you. I mean, you sent up, we had a great phone call. It's like 3 weeks ago, I think. Eric Hinman connected us, so shout out Eric. It's like, you got to connect with my buddy Sean from Primal Beef. They're doing awesome stuff. Had a great call. You sent us a huge box of beef to the office. It was like ribeye, strips, everything. And we just got a new office. It's like 2 minutes away from the studio. So we had like 6 people over. So we just threw a bunch of those steaks on the grill, and they were so good, man. That product is incredible, dude.
Hell yeah.
Right out of the Shenandoah Valley, right? Grass-finished product right out of there?
The Shenandoah Valley, yep. Fruit, so grass-fed and then finished on a blend of fruit, vegetables, and then like distiller's grain, basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The fattiness on those was different.
It was perfect.
It was like perfect for the grill.
Yeah, different, right?
For sure.
You can tell that fruit finish does something special to it, man. It does something special to the beef.
Yeah,
sure.
And then Harry always throws down on the charcoal grill outside, so it gets that nice crust on it too. Just some butter. We literally just sliced it up, threw it on some cutting boards, nothing else, no utensils, just ate with our hands. It was incredible.
Like a bunch of savages.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, the way it should be.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah,
I feel like most people like want to sit down and eat steak with a fork and knife. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
Let's like eat with your hands.
Yeah, pro tip, if you travel and you order a steak, unless you specifically ask them from a nice steakhouse to send you utensils, they don't. So there's been numerous nights where for work I'll be on the road and I'll order a steak from the nicest steakhouse I can find, which is always, no offense to those steakhouses, always a little disappointing after you've got your own beef operation.
Yeah.
But they don't send utensils. So I'm in there in my hotel room by myself, just like literally gnawing on a ribeye with my bare hands.
Yeah. It was like, Liver King posted a video yesterday. I think he's in New York, so he's at Peter Luger's, and he was like double fisting 2 ribeye, like tomahawk ribeyes right off the bone. So that's basically you.
As he should.
Just without the steroids. But
exactly right. Exactly right.
But I've been Harry and I talk about this a lot. For us, it's such a cool feeling since we've done the show of like connecting with people like you that are either own beef companies or they're ranchers. You're able to send us product. We're able to buy product from you and then just like host these awesome dinners with our friends. Like, I think it's just such a cool experience when you actually know the person that's growing the food for you. They're harvesting it. The product is amazing. And then you kind of have the obligation to share it with your friends. Like, I feel like that's actually natural, and that's what we should be leaning in towards.
I 100% agree. And that was one of our big goals as a company was, I think the family dinner table is kind of a dying thing right now. So in my mind, whenever there's steak getting served, like people are gathering around.
Yeah.
And bringing that kind of communal aspect to the meal back where, look, no offense to people who love chicken or fish, but like if I'm cooking chicken or fish, I'm not necessarily inviting a whole bunch of people over to partake in it. But if I'm throwing a brisket or 2 on the smoker and I'm working, 14 hours on that brisket, people are coming over and we're breaking bread together at the end of that. And I think beef just naturally kind of brings people together to share that experience. And it's probably been that way for thousands of years.
Yeah. Food too is like, there's just the spiritual traditions around food, whether it's like the preparation, the kill, or actually like enjoying the meal with people. Like we talk about this a decent amount on the show, just like getting over food and giving thanks. It's a dying tradition. It's like
huge.
And there really is that component of building relationship over food and being able to both share a similar appreciation for the food that gets put on your table. Like, it's just, it is kind of a shame that we're losing that. Like, there's so much value in the communal aspects of food.
It's huge, and it's been that way as a species for as long as we've basically been around. People have been breaking bread around campfires and gathering around over the harvest and fellowship. And in my day job now, working for Echelon Front, which is a leadership consultancy, question I get asked a lot by leaders is, how do I start to build more of a relationship with my team? So it's not just, you know, the boss and my people were more of a commune, if you will. And I'm like, break bread, get together, offsite, don't talk about work, and just have a meal. And conversations just tend to flow and revolve around those meals, and it could not be any more natural.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like do the change of scenery, get out of the office, just share a meal, don't even talk about work. And I guarantee you, as a part of that like communal experience, you'll learn more about your employee or whoever than you ever will just trying to talk to them in the boardroom or the conference room
100%.
or whatever, right?
Yeah, if you're ordering pizza, bring it into the rec room. Like, people aren't going to be talking that much, but you get away from work, you have a good meal, you actually sit down and ask some smart questions, and you'll get to know people real quick.
Yeah. It's interesting that you have that perspective of the leadership consulting and then also of a beef company too, because one of the things that we always get pushback on is like, isn't this diet or this lifestyle more expensive? And I say, like, number one, I don't think it's more expensive. And even if it was, it's a holistic asset where I think our businesses exist because we got our diet under control, which gave us great energy. It gave us confidence that pushed us to start the show.
Yeah.
So it makes me think a lot about, like, with a client, would you ever talk to a client about nutrition? Because I would think that if you get someone's nutrition dialed in, it's going to give them more mental clarity. It's going to give them more energy. It would probably make them a better leader or better at their job, right?
It's not something that usually comes up, but if people ask, 100% I do. And really, it's just an investment. And if you look at the amount of money that America as a whole spends on not eating properly, it's like our biggest expenditure as a nation outside of maybe the military is healthcare. And all healthcare starts with what you're putting in your system. And, you know, does a really good farm-raised ribeye cost more than a Big Mac and a supersized Coke? It does.
Yeah.
In the short term. In the long term, it's actually way less expensive to take care of yourself and invest in your health and eat good food that's going to pay dividends than it is to go down the road of just putting all that other stuff in your body, because there's no free rides, and eventually it's going to come full circle.
Does it surprise you how much we've normalized the current model of healthcare, where it's just like most people are now kind of just accepting the fact that as they age, they aren't going to be as healthy, they aren't going to feel as great, they're not going to be as active?
It does. It's disappointing, but I think there's kind of a new wave of people who are seeing that's not necessarily the case. And a big piece of that is this social media world. You know, you're watching my boss, Jocko, who's in his 50s, and he's getting after it every single day. And he still looks like a silverback gorilla in his 50s. And you've got guys like Joe Rogan who are out there, massive following, telling people to be healthy and then living out that lifestyle. And I think he's upper 50s now. He's 55, 56, something like that.
Yep.
And people, I think, are seeing that it's just not the case. Like, you can be very active, very healthy, well into old age. And probably the key to that health is being active and investing in yourself.
Yeah. It's one of the benefits of social media. I know it's absolutely a double-edged sword, but I even think about, with me, and we've talked about this a bunch of the podcasts, that I had really bad autoimmune issues. And I started seeing on social media other people that had similar autoimmune issues that were going carnivore. And that gave me the proof of concept of, like, all right, these people prove that they can heal, so why can't I do the same thing? And it's the same thing with what you're saying about age. I feel like there's all these guys that are inspirations to other people that show, damn, just because I'm 45, 50, that doesn't mean I have to, like, wither away. I can actually get better as I age too.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, my wife has celiac disease, you know, so she didn't find out she had it until I think she was in college, and she started having all these issues, and it's autoimmune disease. So it floats around in the gene pool. So hopefully none of my kids get it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But for us, what that means is our house is full of meat, vegetables, and fruit, basically, because there's can't really have gluten. So it eliminates a lot of those already not best choices.
Yeah.
But she eats right, and she doesn't have any issues whatsoever.
Yeah. So she's, like, essentially cured, right? As long as she stays away from gluten.
100%.
Yeah. What is it? Does she get, like, really bad flare-ups if she has any of those foods?
It's like just sickness. It's literally a sickness.
Yeah.
You know, she'll be down hard for a day or two with almost like flu-like symptoms.
Yeah.
Your body's just rejecting all of those things.
Awesome.
One of the reasons Brett and I were really excited to have you on the show is you kind of fit, like, the perfect box between someone who's in the beef industry, a co-founder of a beef business, but you also have the business background, the military background, leadership skills. It's like basically fits all the boxes that we like to talk about.
Everything we love to talk about, you fit that. You check the box.
So we're like, Sean, this is going to be a kick-ass episode. So I think a really helpful place to start would just be your military experience and kind of what got you to the point of, entering this business experience that you have with Primal Beef, like the build up before that, the military experience. I know you have 13 years of experience in the military, and just, that background and how that prepared you for everything that you're doing today.
Yeah. I mean, literally the SEAL teams, which is my former community, gave me everything that I have today. Like every single thing that I have today is a result of being having the opportunity to be a part of that community. So, the vast majority of my good habits I learned in that community. How to not have bad habits I learned in that community, although there's a decent amount of people in the military that have bad habits.
Yeah.
All my friends, basically, that community gave me. My wife, that community gave me. My kids, as a byproduct of that community gave me. So basically, that's the lead up to where I am today. Is everything that I do is framed from a mindset of the experience that I had in the military.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many dudes that are in like the millennial demographic that watch that. I forget what it was on the Discovery Channel. It was like Buzz Class 234 or
yeah,
whatever.
Man, hell yeah.
And like, you hear the instructors saying like it pays to be a winner. And I think society could honestly use a little bit more of that, because I just look at those dudes and I meet guys like you and some other people that are in the teams, and just being like put together, polished, dialed in, competitive. It seems like we've kind of just, like, a lot of men have just lost those values. So when you meet dudes that have those values, it's refreshing to be a part of it, because I think we could use that as a society.
I would 100% agree. And I think probably the biggest mistake that our society is making right now is they're just not offering men challenges, which is what men thrive on. So it's like this thought process that if I remove all the difficult things from your life, that somehow your life is going to be better. Yeah. But that's not the case for either of the sexes necessarily, but especially for men. We thrive on challenges, and whether you realize that that's good for you or not is a different subject matter. But by removing all of these hurdles and just putting in these constant luxuries and trying to do things like remove being uncomfortable as much as we possibly can, I think we're doing a big detriment to the society. And if you look at all these different arenas now that young men are flocking to, it's not surprising to anybody that's been watching, because they're all areas that offer them some sort of challenge, which is, I think, what we all crave at a base level. Yeah,
John Eldredge has that really good book, Wild at Heart. And I feel like I got my hands on that at the right time when I was like just starting my entrepreneurial journey, coming to faith, and really just like starting to understand what I was missing, which was just a rite of passage, like something that was going to make me answer the question, like, are you qualified? Are you capable to do the things that you need to do to be a man and lead a family? So I feel like that resonates with me, just like this idea of there being a rite of passage for young guys.
It's such a good book. And if you look at, so I grew up Protestant, and I'm Catholic now, but if you look at the Catholic Church specifically, the only area of the Catholic Church that's growing is the traditional kind of like Latin mass-based Catholics. And the reason is it's hard and it's different, and it requires a tremendous amount of sacrifice to partake in something like that. And people are curious of like why the church is dying. I'm like, well, it's because for the church in general, like if you look at the past 40 or 50 years of the church in America, what's the message that they've been sending to guys? Be nice. Yeah. Be civilized, all these different
passivity.
Yeah, be passive, all these different things. It's like, that's kind of the opposite of, you can call the disciples, the OGs, a lot of different things, but passive is probably not one of them.
100%.
Yeah. So all these different areas where guys are finding meaning now, there's usually some type of challenge associated with that meaning.
Yeah, there's like this weird like passivity associated with Jesus that's not correct.
Yeah.
So
they think he's like a yoga instructor.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. And then you actually like pull some of the quotes from the Bible of what he said to people, and it's like, no, he was an absolute stud. He was a savage. And that's actually the next book. Harry and I help, we run this Christian men's group where it's like we do a 30-minute run and then we do some scripture and we read a chapter of a new book. Yeah. And the next book we're reading is John Eldredge's second book, which is Beautiful Outlaw, which I think addresses who Jesus actually was too.
Yeah, outstanding book. And the interpretation of, again, there's nothing that he said that was anything other than revolutionary and extraordinarily challenging.
Yeah.
Like, he never said to anyone, you're perfectly fine the way that you are.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, he said kind of the opposite of all those things. And he was very upfront and honest with the disciples and the original Christians, which was, life's not going to be easy, guys. Like you're opening yourself up to basically a world of suffering in my name, but it's going to be worth it if you're open up to it.
Yeah. It's amazing how, I feel like every time I've run towards friction in my life, there's always been a good outcome from it, even if I didn't notice it in the moment. And every time I run away from friction and just keep relying on the easy thing, I turn into this shell of myself.
Yeah.
You know?
There's no growth if you're running away from it, right?
Yeah.
Anytime there's friction, another word for friction would be stress. And anytime there's stress, there's growth. You want to get bigger, got to put your body under stress. You want to get faster, got to put your body under stress. Want to be better mentally, be able to mentally cope with things, you have to put your mind under stress. And every time you're doing that, you're building up your ability to deal with that stress a little bit more and more and more. And you're just going to be better for it in the end, even if you might not see it as you're in it.
From your experience serving, doing that around, like having that friction around other guys, I feel like plays into that even more so. Like if you're kind of going down that path of seeking discomfort solo, it's great. You can go far. You can really like figure stuff out. But when you're doing it in the context of like a team, that's when you actually really have this dynamic where you're pushing yourself, you're sharpening yourself up against other people. And that too is like kind of going back to what we were talking about. Like I feel like what a lot of guys are missing right now is just that group environment where they feel like they have meaning within the group, but then they also are being pushed by other guys who hold them accountable.
It's the fellowship aspect of things, right? And the mutual suffering aspect of things. And is there somebody out there that maybe could make it through the selection pipeline to be a SEAL by themselves? Maybe. I have my doubts about that. But all of a sudden you put guys in a group and, you know, it's still not a big number, but 13% of people that go through make it through. And I think that number would be like 0% if there wasn't the group aspect of it, because everybody's going to have at least one moment of weakness in that. And what you're relying on during that moment where you're tired or you're super fatigued or you're hypothermic for the 1,000th time is you're relying on your teammates to help pull you through those things.
Yeah. How old were you when you realized that you actually craved that friction of the military, and not just the military, but you actually wanted to be an operator at the highest level?
13. And I don't know that I would say I realized those things when I was 13, but 13 is when I made the decision that that's what I wanted to do with my life. And probably innately at some level, I understood that those things would be involved, but it would be very disingenuous to sit here and say like, that's why I wanted to become a SEAL at 13 was because I knew the communal aspect and all those things. I think just being a young boy who was just starting to be fueled by testosterone, reading a book about it, those things kind of came to life in my mind, and I think they were very appealing, but I couldn't have articulated that at 13 years old. It was just when people asked me what it was like, I read a book, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was alive. I felt like this is what I was called to do. But 13-year-old Sean didn't know that was the reasons he was being drawn to that. It was just adventure, basically. And then you get a little bit older, you get a little bit more mature, you get in the community and you're like, this is what all those feelings were being directed at.
So did you go high school right into the Navy?
I did not. No. So I went, that was my plan initially. And then my parents, who were supportive more or less about going to the military, they wanted me to go. They just said, hey, just think about this. If you go to college now, you know, you have the option to be an officer, you have the option to go enlisted, you can do what you want, but you'll be done with college. And now let's say that you don't do that. You go into the Navy, you do 10, 15 years, and now you wanted to get a degree. You're 32, 35 years old, and you're going to be in college with a bunch of 21-year-old knuckleheads. So he's like, why don't you just do the college thing now, and then on the back end, do whatever you want to do. So I took that advice, went to Texas A&M, which was good for me because it was a maturing process for me too. Out on my own, learning how to, you know, train by myself, learning how to do just like general life skills when you're out on your own. And that time allowed me to be a more mature person going in to the training, which 100% helped me out on the backside.
Yeah. Even just the time management of being in college too. And just being like, I can do really well in school, or I can just completely screw off and party and do like, that's helpful as well.
100%. And I was the world's lamest college student.
Were you really?
100%.
Yeah.
I was so focused and paranoid about screwing things up that my life, I would wake up at 4:30. I would link up with some guys at A&M around 5:15. We'd do a PT. We'd eat. I'd get another PT in by myself before class started. I'd go to class around like 9. I'd go to class all day. I worked at a school, at an after-school program with young kids. I'd go do that, and then I'd go home, homework, sleep. That was it. And on the weekend, it was just more time to train on the weekend. But like, I didn't really go to parties. I was paranoid about getting into trouble because I thought, you know, if I have an incident, all these hard work that I put in is just going to evaporate. So it was good for me for sure, but I, you know, did not have the typical college experience, which honestly I could care less about.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a service for you now, like not
100%.
looking back and not having to deal with. I think it sets a lot of people back in a lot of ways. You know, having to, you know, you end up associating with the wrong people with the wrong habits, and just like that, maybe your SEAL opportunities are
Vanish.
off the table.
100%. And I was very fortunate to always be around good people. Surround myself, you know, probably by God's grace more than necessarily my deliberate choices at first, and then just also very blessed to know what I wanted to do. So I never felt like I was floundering in life. I never felt like, oh my goodness, I'm about to graduate and I don't have a job lined up. I don't have the career path. I don't know what I'm being called to do. I was very fortunate at a young age to know this is exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
You just have that focus.
Did you find other people who were that focused at A&M, or was it kind of isolating?
Yes. So at A&M, I fell in with a group of guys who wanted to do the exact same thing.
Nice.
And it was definitely an iron sharpens iron type scenario because I thought I was in good shape until I linked up with these guys. And then I realized, oh, this is what being in actual good shape looks like is these guys. They were just savages. They were all super fast, super strong, super good swimmers. So it was just another experience of associating with people better than you and becoming better through that association.
So these are all dudes that also wanted to go to Buds as well.
Yep. And they all, I think like 3/4 of them did, and 3/4 of them made it.
Dude, that's insane.
Yeah.
So that shows how legit that group actually was.
Very, very good group of guys. Very good group of guys.
Dude, I love the way that you're explaining your college experience. And you don't know this, but how Harry and I met is we both played baseball at the same school up in Boston. It's called Babson, small little D3 school.
Yeah.
And D3 sports are so different than D1 sports where most people kind of view it casually like a hobby.
Yeah.
So if shit doesn't work out, most people just quit. And I felt like, I think the reason why Harry and I get along really well is we both just want to achieve our potential and work hard. But in college, you get very influenced by like the older dudes and like the drinking culture. And I think we both left our college experience just being like, yeah, we were like pretty good students, not great. We could have been done way more on the baseball field. Just feeling like you kind of pissed away your potential and never wanted to have that feeling again. So I think that's so cool that you just had that singular focus, that mission, and you're like, nothing is going to detract me from achieving this goal right now.
It was a huge blessing, and I don't think it was anything that I personally did. It was just for whatever reason that calling called to me, and it was just kind of devoted to that beforehand because I was not super disciplined before that. I was not a super hard worker before that. When I told my family what I wanted to do, they were in disbelief of like, what? It's like the polar opposite of, you know, teenage Sean Glass, basically. I was a good kid, but I wasn't super hard worker. I wasn't super motivated. Played soccer growing up. I was naturally good enough to where like I'd make the team, but I never applied myself to anything whatsoever until this moment.
Yeah.
And then it was just kind of like the light switch. Like, oh, you can't do this and not fully apply yourself.
When did you experience the largest like growth period of your life? Was there a moment in time where you kind of look back and you're like, man, that was kind of like it for me, where I saw things differently?
My parents separated, and they separated when I was pretty young, but they didn't officially divorce until I was probably 17 or 18. And, you know, no one wants to go through something like that as a kid when like your world's disintegrating around you. But it definitely gave me a lot of tools that I didn't have before after I learned how to deal with it. There was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of anger. But after I got all that stuff under wraps, then it was just my perception of what was actually difficult and what actually was a challenge had changed so dramatically that things just didn't faze me like they used to. And I've always been pretty easygoing, but that was definitely an experience where I was like, well, if you survived that whole drama, like this is no big deal. You know, you got a test coming up. Okay, whatever, study for it.
Yeah.
You know, you got a 30-page paper coming up. Well, whatever, man, sit down and write your paper.
Yeah. It's a really interesting answer because my guess is like 9 out of 10 people that would ask you that question would just assume that you would say something about your military experience, but it would sound it was actually your parents' divorce when you were 17, 18 that really sharpened you up the most?
Yeah, I think I probably wouldn't have had the same level of ability to deal with things in the military as I did going into it. And I think that was a big advantage for me was I was a little bit older than most guys. I was 25 when I finally got into the SEAL teams. So I had a maturity that a lot of other guys probably had yet to come by.
Yeah.
And just a perspective of like what's honestly difficult and what's not like physically demanding. Yes, absolutely. Physically difficult. Absolutely. But not like world shattering, not earth shattering. So my barometer for what's actually an issue, what's actually a struggle was pretty dramatically shifted through that experience.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, so entering the SEAL, you entered the SEALs at 25, and most other people are probably like 18, 19?
Probably early 20s would be the best age. A lot of guys come in at 18. The guys that make it through at 18 blow my mind.
Really?
It's insane.
You're a kid.
You literally are a kid.
A puppy.
Yeah, and there's just these studs that are coming through and just making it through at that age. So I graduated A&M when I was 23. I was on the 5.5 to 6 year program. And I thought I was going to graduate and go right into the military because I had my spot. So the way that it works for guys that want to go officer candidate school is you have to put in a package. You compete against everybody else that wants to do it, you know, hundreds, thousands of people in the country. And then I think like 10 a year are selected. So I got selected to go to OCS my senior year of college. So I knew I was going to get to go, but it took them about a year and a half to actually get me a spot because I had a surgery on my shoulder in college to repair a very small tear in my labrum. And I had to go through this medical review board before they would officially give me the date. And in my mind, I'm like, they're just pouring over this and trying to find a way to disqualify me. When in reality, probably what it was I have a folder with my injury in it, and it goes on some Navy doc's desk buried underneath 300 other people that are in top ahead of me. And he's just working through all of these different people's cases and signing off on it. It probably just took him a year to get to mine. But that was very frustrating for me because I was like, well, no, I'm ready now. I'm prepared now. I know I have my spot. Just send me to the freaking Navy and let's get it on.
Yeah.
But, you know, another lesson in timing, and I would say, you know, divine timing versus my own personal timing. My experience would be vastly different if I didn't go in when I did. I wouldn't have met my two best friends in the world. I wouldn't have met my wife, who I met through one of those outstanding men. I wouldn't have had the mentors that I had in the military. Probably wouldn't have known Jocko and Leif. Wouldn't have had the opportunity to work for Echelon Front. Wouldn't have started the beef business. Wouldn't be living where I'm living right now. So it's just another example of sometimes timelines don't work out necessarily the way that you want them to, but just roll with the punches and keep going, and things typically shake out all right.
It's amazing when you connect the dots backwards, how God's timing is actually always perfect, even if you don't see it in that exact moment.
Man, I was so frustrated. So frustrated.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
You know? You're like waiting for a full year basically for something that you're like, this isn't even an issue anymore.
Literally not an issue. Like not an issue whatsoever. Very frustrating, but again, lots of good lessons learned. And then the timing wise, I wouldn't change a thing about it.
What BUDS class were you?
272 was my BUDS class. Then I graduated 273 because if you're an officer, after you graduate BUDS, you get rolled to go to an officer-specific course called the Junior Officer Training Course, and then you pick up with the next class that comes through.
Yeah.
So you graduate BUDS, you get separated from your class, they keep going. You go to I think it's 7-week-long leadership course, and then you pick up with the next BUDS class that goes by.
Okay.
So 272 and then graduated 273.
And what would you say, what was your like biggest strength or skill set in BUDS, and what did you struggle with the most as part of that experience?
Ooh, I was pretty well-rounded from the prep and at A&M. So physically, there was nothing that I felt like I really struggled at. I was pretty good at all those things. You know, up here at some, middle of the pack at others. It's just a grind.
Yeah.
You know, so it doesn't matter how you're feeling that day. You're just going to have to keep going. The thing that I hated the most was the cold. Like you're just constantly cold, and I don't enjoy the experience of being cold. And you're just, it's like 6 months of being borderline hypothermic the entire time. So Surf immersion, not surf.
Oh, you can't say surf torture anymore?
Immersion now. Surf immersion, you're just laying in the ocean for an hour and a half at 55 degrees water temperature, waves crashing over you, just being cold. Some guys loved it because they weren't getting harassed by the instructors. Probably a lot of actually health benefits from being in the cold water like that.
Yeah.
I hated it. I couldn't stand it. I was like, give me a boat, give me a log, let me run, let me do something. Did not like the cold.
Is there anything that's like a consensus, like this is the best part of buds, this was the worst part? Or does everyone kind of find their little place where they have a little bit of peace?
I think people kind of find their own places. So my swim buddy loved our 2-mile ocean swims because it was no one's messing with you.
Yeah.
I hated it because it's just 2 miles of side stroke. Literally, you're not seeing anything. You're just like barely coming up for a breath. When you're watching the shoreline, it doesn't look like anything's moving.
Yeah.
You look like you're making no progress. I hated it just because it was like monotony, but he loved it because no one was messing with us. And if we passed, we passed. And we didn't get beat afterwards, remediated afterwards. So I think everybody kind of falls in on different things that they're comfortable with.
How do you process that experience now, like going through buds? Like,
oh my goodness,
how hard it was.
It was the best time of my life.
Yeah.
It was the absolute best time of my life. Now, going through it, there's no way I would have said that. But in hindsight, you're a young man, you're at your physical peak, endurance-wise. You've worked so much for this goal, and now you're here with all these other just outstanding individuals. And that's your life, is you wake up, you train, and then you go to bed and you repeat. And it was just a single-minded focus. And looking back at it, I absolutely loved it. Not going through it, I didn't have that frame of reference.
Yeah.
Good days and bad days, right? But looking back at it, it's nothing but just fond memories.
I'm really appreciative that I got to live out in San Diego for a year, and then we can have this conversation, because it's like the dynamic of Hotel Coronado being there, and like one of the most beautiful hotels in the world, and then just seeing these guys go through buds, getting the shit kicked out of them, is so funny. Like, I remember the first week I moved out to San Diego, I was just on a walk in Coronado, had some podcast in, and I hear this noise behind me, and it's like 30 or 40 dudes in buds just getting the shit. They were on a run, doing a shitload of push-ups, and I was like, I totally forgot that the compound is literally right there. Just the dynamic of those two things is so funny.
It's amazing. It's such a unique little microcosm, and it also gets a lot of people to wash out because, like, this can all be over. All I have to do is ring this bell 3 times, and then I'm going to be warm back in Coronado at the Dell, eating a cheeseburger, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But it's very short-term sighted, because the reality is now you're going to a ship, and then the Navy's got you. So it gets people being in that environment.
Yeah. After that shower and that cheeseburger, you're probably like, damn, why
Lots of remorse.
Oh, that
Lots
must
of
be the worst cheese. Like the last bite of that cheeseburger is just brutal.
The worst cheeseburger of all time.
What did I do?
It seems like in modern society, especially like the last 5 years, buds has gotten so much publicity. It seems like some guys in the teams like get annoyed by how much publicity buds actually gets. Some guys think that it's justified. Like, what is your perspective on it?
I think the less the public know about it, the better. And that's just for the reason that they don't understand.
Yeah.
They don't understand the reasoning for the things that we do to those young men, and that we all had done to us when we're going through that training. Some people would look at it and be aghast at the conditions that we put those young men through. But the reality is, it's nothing about it is sadistic. There's a purpose for every single thing that we do. And the instructors that are, the active duty SEALs that are leading that instruction, when you're going through it, it probably seems like they hate you with a passion, but nothing could be further from the truth. They love you. They just want you to get the right people in the community. So they're screening the people out that don't belong there. And then they're trying to prepare the right people for the rigors of the job, because the reality is your job in the Navy is to, in that community, is to close with and kill the enemy. And that's it. And that's what we're training people for. We're not training them to be baristas. We're not training them to be salesmen. We're training them to go overseas, do very gnarly things, and then come back home in one piece with your honor and your dignity intact. And that process of buds works. I don't know why it works. I ran a phase of buds during my career. It is chaos, but it works in getting people prepared to do the job.
Yeah.
So I think the less that people know about it, honestly, the better, because there's no way to get them to truly understand why all that stuff is necessary. And we faced congressional inquiries before. We faced all these different things that are trying to poke holes in this program. It's like that program is what keeps those young men alive.
Right.
Is the knowledge that no matter how bad it gets, they can go further. No matter how many times they get knocked down, they can get back up and they can keep going. And that's what our country demands of them in that job. And that's what their brothers demand of them in that job, is that the person to their left and the person to their right is going to be that individual. And the common thing that links everyone together is that pipeline. And the less that people know about it, I think the better that it is. There's nothing brutal that happens to people in that pipeline. There's nothing sadistic that happens to people in that pipeline. It's tough, it's challenging. And like we just said, it's my fondest memories as an adult is going through that. But I don't think most people can understand that when they see what they're going through.
Yeah, this is probably a naive thing to say, but I feel like a lot of that judgment is coming from people too who like can't run more than 10 miles, and like they don't understand the extent that people need to be prepared for going and fighting, especially in the context of if you're not prepared, it's going to affect the ability of the entire team. So I appreciate the context of that.
It puts everybody's safety at risk, and it puts the mission at risk. And the reason that we get sent, the military in general gets sent overseas, is there's some strategic objective that we're supposed to accomplish. Right, wrong, good decisions, bad decisions by politicians, remove all that. The people on the ground are over there because they're being told to go over there. And the training that we give people is what keeps people alive. And that's it. And that training starts at buds for us.
So how old were you when you actually got into the teams, once you got through all your training?
26 maybe? Might have just turned 26.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that must have been the coolest feeling, like learning from these older dudes that actually had like combat experience that were like 35, 40 maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
It was awesome. And I came into the community at such an amazing time because the wars were full swing. So everybody that I was learning from had multiple deployments underneath their belt, which prior to 9/11 to 2001, that wasn't the case. Like there was no real experience in the teams. Vietnam was too far removed, so most of the guys from Vietnam had already retired. So 2001, a lot of lessons that we had already learned were getting relearned. By the time I got in the community, things were very tight, very tight. I remember, can always get better, but very tight.
I remember hearing a podcast of Jocko saying, like, in the early 90s when he got in, he's like, you had to hope that maybe you found someone from Vietnam. Yeah. But other than that, it was all just like theory because no one had really been in combat.
That's exactly right. And look, training is amazing. And training can prepare you for lots of things, but there's nothing like the real deal. You just can't replicate that. The lessons that are learned there. And one thing our community does very well is we are very anal about lessons learned. Very anal. We're our own harshest critics. We're debriefing all the time. You train, you debrief. You deploy, you debrief. You go on an operation, doesn't matter what time you get back, you're debriefing on the backside of that to capture those lessons learned. So the cycle of training, debriefing, deploying, debriefing, by the time that I got in, I mean, not that you still don't make mistakes, but it was sharp. And I was learning from people who had been there and done that.
One of the things that I just like, I definitely envy is like the nature of the military being so focused on kind of the one objective that it allows you to very cleanly stack skills that equip you for that one objective. And I don't know, in the real world, I think a lot of people get distracted with, a bunch of different opportunities or things that, maybe like aren't all that relevant, and they end up not really focusing on the skills that they need in order to like be successful or be like a competent individual. But the military, it's like you can stack skills and they directly apply to your ability to be qualified and lead. So I'm curious, are there any skills that you've noticed that you've been able to carry over from the military into the real world that are like the most applicable to what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Definitely. Just to kind of broadly talk about what you just said, which is it's your mission. You have to know what your mission is. So in the military, you literally have a mission. So it's pretty set in stone. Like there's an ethos that guides the SEAL teams. We have a mission. We all know what it is. So you can stack all of your skill sets in support of that mission. I think a lot of mistakes that people make in the civilian role, when they're starting a business or starting a new career, is they don't actually know what their quote unquote mission is. They don't actually know what they should be good at to be successful in that role. And the reality is it's the same thing that you should be good at in the military. There's no like secret to military leadership. It's just leadership in a very dynamic environment. But I think some of the things that carried over the most was just the knowledge that like problems aren't necessarily as big as you think that they are. So you have a different perspective when you come from a background of the military about like what's an actual problem. So when I got out of the military, I went to work as the COO of a construction tech company that two of my buddies from the SEAL team started. And one of our biggest assets was we were making all kinds of mistakes that probably would have just crippled other companies. But to us, it was like, okay, no big deal. Like you made a mistake. We learned from it, didn't kill the company. Very mindful of the mistakes that we could make that would kill the company. So we didn't make those, but you're making lots of mistakes and you're learning and you're not getting bogged down in kind of the woe is me, oh my goodness, I screwed up mentality. Like, it's not that big of a deal. So the perception shift of like, not actually a big problem. And I think some people can't recover from those mistakes as easily. And they just kind of downward spiral.
Yeah, you probably have this really interesting blend of like very high operating standards, but then just this awesome ability to deal with chaos where the average person like, oh, we lost this client or whatever, it's all going to go to shit. When it's like, no, like we can very tactically just find another client or figure out what else we need to do. That's something we've noticed just in our first stint in entrepreneurship is it feels like you're oscillating between the biggest wins and then it just feels like shit's just blowing up 24/7. But it's really your mental reaction to it, which determines how good or bad something actually is.
It's funny because sometimes I actually have to ask myself, am I too flippant with this stuff? Like, do I not care enough about some of these things that are happening? But I think that the answer is no.
Yeah.
That's not a thread you want to pull on too hard.
No, I'm like, no, it's fine. But like our company, our first big client, so we were a home building company, but we did it through a software and robotics line.
Yeah.
So people that were our initial clients were taking a pretty big risk with us because we were kind of unproven. And our first client, we actually made the conscious decision to detach ourselves from them because they were just too much drama. And there's no one in the civilian sector is making that decision when they don't have other clients lined up. Well, we have to stay attached to this person because that's where our income is coming from. We looked at it and we just said the amount of our energy that it took to manage this one client took away from our ability to actually improve our system. And that's what success looks like. It's not this one client. This one client is never going to make us $1 billion company, but not being good at what we need to be good at is going to prevent us from being $1 billion company. So we cut them loose. We just said, we'll find someone else that better suits where we are as a company and is a lot less drama. And it worked out really well because now that company is building for the #1 and #5 largest builders in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it takes confidence to do that too.
Even if it's false confidence, at times
but
it takes some confidence to say, hey, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Well, risk is such a, I feel like we could do a whole separate podcast on risk, but just the idea of thinking that you're giving up your entire business, but there really are two realities there where one, you're just like catering to this client and almost shifting your entire business to appease them. And that is a risk in itself. Like you're shifting how you're operating your system so that you're dealing with this unruly, dramatic client.
Yeah.
Or you guys, give up the cash flow and take that leap and refine your system. So
you take a tactical hit for the strategic long-term effect. And look, there's two types of risk. There's a lot of different types of risk, but two mainly. There's the risk of action, and then there's also the risk of inaction.
Yeah.
So, hey, what could potentially happen if we go down this course and detach ourselves from this client? We could struggle with cash influx. How much cash do we have in the bank right now? That has to last us until we get a new client that we can build with. But the risk of inaction was way greater than that, which was we did not have the bandwidth at the time based on our staff size, which was basically like 7 of us, to manage this client and also push the technology forward to where we needed it to be. So the risk for us was actually keeping that client because that client was never going to make us successful. The technology, which is what was going to make us successful. So the bigger risk for us was staying attached to them was actually the bigger risk.
Dude, it's so funny you say that, because that's actually something that Harry and I are going through right now. I think I told you this a little bit, where when we started the podcast, obviously the podcast, it takes a while to monetize it meaningfully. So we're like, all right, well, what are some other sources of things that we can do for income? We're like, all right, well, we're really good at writing on Twitter. That's how we blew up this whole brand. So we had some early sponsors that said, hey, can you guys run our Twitter account for us? We're like, all right, great. We'll make some retainers. We'll put some cash in our pocket. It'll keep the lights on. That small little side hustle is now turned into like a 14 client agency, which is great, right? Because it allows you to pay the bills, make some money. But one of the things that we learned is that it takes up so much of our time and energy that it actually pulls away from our core mission, which is to create the best podcast possible to make as many people healthy as possible. So we've basically decided, look, we either need to purely outsource ourselves and get us fully out of the agency, even if it hurts our margins, or we just have to stop doing it, because like we feel like our God-given purpose is to do this show and make as many people as healthy as possible.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to do, but we just kind of justified like that's the long-term strategic thing that we need to lock in on.
You have to be able to view things from a detached perspective. And the more detached you are, the more that you'll see what the actual solution to the problem is. Because the solution to the problem is never inside of the problem itself. It's always external to it. And our ability to remove ourselves emotionally from the income that's coming in and really focus on what the mission is going to be pivotal. And, you know, our company was doing a custom home building in a factory. They had a software system that would break down any home, no matter how architecturally complex, into a series of wall panels, floor panels, and roof panels. And then a factory line built around robotics the software would translate to the robotics, and the robotics would frame out those walls. So we could frame out a 2,600 square foot home in like 6 hours in the factory. So our biggest competitor was a company called Katera. And we had like at the time, maybe $2 million in funding that we had secured. And we thought we were like rich, you know, a bunch of, you know, oh my God, this is amazing, $2 million. Katera had $1 billion, $1 billion of funding, because they were some Silicon Valley gurus company. And they didn't keep the focus on what the mission is. And they got very distracted. So we always knew what's going to make us successful would be our ability to be the best framers, the best builders of homes in the business. Because if we can't provide that service, no one's going to go with us, because they know for a fact they can go ask Joe to frame it by hand and it'll get done.
Yeah.
So if we can't surpass the quality and offer them more of a time saving and value than that, we're never going to get adopted.
Yeah.
Katera very quickly lost focus because, you know, they have $1 billion in funding. More money, more problems, right? As the philosopher Biggie Smalls would say. So they started throwing money at anything, and they lost focus on their core offering to the public, and they bankrupted themselves, which was awesome for us, because guess who we hired? All of their smartest people are now working for our company. But it was the focus of what's really going to detached, right? Could we have chased other opportunities? Yes, but we knew that wasn't our mission. Our mission was be the best framers we can be. And from that, the clients will come.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how do you think about detaching yourself from these decisions emotionally and just being really clear with how you make decisions that are honestly tough to make when you do have emotional attachment to it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a skill, and it's something that you can get better at. And fortunately for me and my background, like that's all that the training in the military is it's the training you to detach, because they're putting you in all these really stressful scenarios. And your key to overcoming those scenarios and being successful is, can you detach from the stress level? So detachment is a skill, and anybody can get better at detaching. You just have to practice it. And the good news is, because life is hard, it gives you plenty of opportunities every day to detach. And the more emotionally connected you are to a problem, the harder it's going to be to stay detached. So sometimes you literally just have to tell yourself, you have to stay detached.
Yeah.
Don't view this emotionally, and you'll tend to make the right decisions. Having someone that's there with you can help out too, because if you start getting too emotionally involved in it, you can pull them back out a little bit, and vice versa. If you start getting too emotionally involved in a decision, you know, and you're staying detached, then you can help each other make those detached decisions.
And then you have that added confidence of having like two brothers in the fight versus you being by yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, I knew I liked how you said how sometimes you have to remind yourself, like, am I being almost too cavalier about this because I just feel good even in the face of adversity?
Yeah.
We felt like we were in a good spot with our agency. We had a day where we actually lost 2 clients in the same day. And if this was us like a year ago, we've been like, oh shit, we got to go find someone new. And we're like, all right, we'll just go find 2 more clients.
No big deal.
It's all we can do.
Yeah.
What else are we going to do? Like get emotional about it? It's not going to help. It's not going to help.
That's going to be very
mission.
detrimental, getting emotional about it.
Yeah. One of the other things that you said earlier that I loved was this concept of debriefing, which probably seems so intuitive to you. But Harry and I were just talking about this. We're like, why don't we debrief more? Why don't we watch our podcast back? Why don't we like talk about sales calls that we were on together?
Yeah.
Like it's like watching game footage when you played baseball or a sport. Like, why do we just stop doing that when we start working?
You should 100% do that, because debriefing is the best tool that you have to get better at anything you want to get better at. And one of the reasons that the military, let's say SOF in general, is so good is we get the ability to train more than others. We're a small force, whether you're talking about Green Berets or SEALs or Rangers or MARSOC or the TF-160th pilots. You're smaller in size than a Marine battalion, so you can spend more time training. And then the real value of that training is, are you capturing those lessons and debriefing afterwards? And if you're not, then you're going to continue to make the same mistakes. And if you're not debriefing the podcast or debriefing the sales calls, you're going to guaranteed you're going to continue to do some of the same things that are counterproductive. And my last tour in the Navy, I was running all wartime training for the West Coast SEAL team. So it was my job to train every single platoon on the West Coast for war. And by the end of my tour there, I could predict with certainty what platoons were going to be good platoons and what platoons were going to struggle. And the tool that I would use is the debrief. If I watched that platoon taking the debrief seriously, I knew for a fact they were going to get better.
Yeah.
And if platoons didn't take the debrief seriously, or they just blew it off, not only did they not get better, what typically happened is they actually got worse. Because what happens is they're making the same mistakes over and over again. And anybody that's ever been in an environment where the same mistakes are getting made, the frustration level builds up. You start to kind of turn on each other, and all of a sudden the dynamic of that platoon breaks down, and they would spend 6 months training and they'd actually be in a worse place than they would when they started, because they weren't debriefing. Single best tool that you have to make sure that you and your team are getting better and better and better is debriefing.
Why do you think that most people don't take the time to actually go back through their day-to-day, or go back through, they have a mission, or they have a week of work, and, why aren't they spending the time to actually go
Because
and do that?
people have egos.
Yeah.
And our egos don't like us to examine the mistakes that we make. And it's very easy for me to make all kinds of different excuses about why I don't have time to do the debrief, or why there's no value in a debrief. But really, it's just a certain type of moral cowardice where you're not willing to look at the mistakes that you've made and see what you can do to do things a little bit differently. Hands down.
Yeah.
Ego. What's the secret to a good debrief?
Secret to a good debrief is, one, being open and honest about the things that went right, the things that went wrong. And it's if you're talking about like a personal debrief versus a group debrief, it's a little bit different, because a personal debrief, it's just you going through the lessons learned. But the principles are still kind of the same. Yeah. You want to look at things chronologically. And what I mean by that is, don't just allow the debrief to just bounce all over the place. You're going to miss things. Be very deliberate about it. So for us, we have phases of an operation. You have really 5 phases, but we say 5, it's really 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but then there's phase 0, which is your mission planning for that operation. Each one of those phases needs to get debriefed in depth before moving on to the next phase. So it could be like a podcast. Yeah. I would say, look at, from the very beginning, your phase 0 would be, what's your prep for that? How much did you know about the guest? How much did the guest know? What questions did you have preloaded before coming in there? That's kind of your phase 0. And then look at it from the introduction to when you got things rocking and rolling, to the closeout, to the editing, to all those different things. And you want to spend time going through each one of those phases before jumping to the next one, or else you're going to miss something critical in there. And then another big piece is, everybody in the debrief has to have a voice in the debrief, and people should be debriefing themselves, because if it's done right, people will be hardest on themselves if the conditions are set properly for a debrief.
Got it. So that's actually a sign that it's a good debrief, or you have a good team, is that people are taking responsibility over their mistakes.
Yeah, you don't want the debrief to start turning into finger pointing.
Got it.
So what I would do if I was setting up a debrief is, let's say I was the leader, I would open it up with the things that I screwed up first. Hey fellas, here's the things that I could have done better tonight. Boom, boom, boom. Hey, let's rock, start at phase 0. Let's go through and see what we could have done better. And then people that are involved in those phases should be the ones that are debriefing those phases. Because if it's done right and the conditions are set right, they're going to be, one, they know more about it than you do because they lived it. And 2, they're going to be typically harsher on themselves than you would be.
What stands out to me with your experience is that you've just had all these different team-oriented experiences, whether it's the construction company, SEALs, what you're doing now with Primal Beef. And I'm wondering if you have any red flags or just like character traits that you kind of try to identify or measure before you go into a relationship with somebody or bring somebody into a team. Because we've realized this, if you have a small team and you have a big mission, like if you have one person who maybe just like doesn't have it all pulled together, it can just break everything. So it's really important to be able to identify some of those red flags really early on.
Humility and integrity, I would say, are probably the 2 biggest. If we were very deliberate about how we hired people on at the construction company, the construction tech company, and it was not focused on who was good at the job. It was focused on who's a good teammate. Because what we understood was a good teammate will be good at the job eventually. Even if they don't start out that way, we can get them to where they need to be. But someone that's good at the job, if they're a bad teammate, we're never going to be able to get them to be a good teammate. So we valued the team ability aspect of things over everything else in our culture because we knew you're going to be spending long hours together, solving problems, and there has to be a high level of trust with the entire team. And I have to want what's best for you, and you have to want what's best for me. And if that's not there, then at some point in time, that's going to cause friction inside of the team. And that was just, there's enough problems to deal with. We don't need to be worried about personality problems inside of the team. There's enough challenges out there already. So humility is probably the number one thing that I would look for in a teammate is, can they own up to their failures? Are they a good person? And do they have a high level of integrity?
How do you try to stress test that in like the work context, I guess?
Yeah. Over time. So hire very slow and fire very quickly. When I say fire very quickly, I don't just mean can people. If someone's a good person and they're trying, but they're just not technically getting it, work with those people. But if someone is a bad teammate, the quicker you can figure that out and get rid of them, the less damage it's going to have on the company. So for us, our hiring process was very slow and very deliberate, and it unfolded over, a course of several different, very detailed interviews, and then spending time with those individuals to try to figure those things out. And the questions that we were asking were more rooted towards trying to find out who this person was versus what this person is necessarily good at. And then it was all backed up by asking people about them. So I would, hey, Harry, give me an example of a time when, you put a teammate's needs before your own. And then if you're like, well, in general, I do this, I'd be like, no. Give me a specific example of a time when you put a teammate's needs before your own. And if it takes you 5 minutes to come up with an example, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you give me an example, I'm like, okay, cool. What's that teammate's contact information so that I can call them and verify what you just said? So we're not giving, and then I'm going to call that person and ask them about that. So the more specific you can get, the more granular you can get, where there's not like these theoretical concepts of, well, I've been a good teammate my entire life. And like, no, give me specific examples. And then I'm going to call those individuals and I'm going to see if you're telling the truth. And if you're not, we're done instantaneously right away. And if things are panning out, then we keep going along the hiring process.
That's pretty incredible. So you've actually found a way to filter for integrity. So it's asking for specifics and then actually vetting the individuals that they're referencing in that interview process.
100% vetting them. And, I'd like to say it's perfect. It's not necessarily perfect, but I don't know that we've ever really at our company, and there's now, I think, 70-something employees. Very, very few people have had to be let go, like maybe a handful of people. And most of those were entry-level jobs in the factory. And it was more not a personality. It wasn't necessarily they're bad teammates. It was more just they didn't show up to work on time. They didn't have the life skills yet to be there. So that process was very helpful in making sure that we didn't have to deal with those personality problems down the line.
Yeah. It's funny that you're saying all this because, this has been our first year, building a team, hiring, firing, et cetera. And to think back to what you said about, hire slow, fire fast, I would say that for both of us, with a few employees in particular, we probably knew within the first 30 days if they were a fit or not. But there's a difference between identifying that they're not a fit and then being willing to have that difficult conversation where if we're honest, we're like, we probably could have made that decision 6 months earlier and saved ourselves like a lot of money and stress and energy wasted trying to invest in this person. So it's interesting. It's like when you know those attributes, you can recognize it early. And then the second step is actually being willing to take action and have that uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah. And those conversations are very difficult and people don't have them for a reason because they're very difficult. But for us, we looked at when we were selecting people in the SEAL teams, there was a kind of a quadrant that we looked at. We called it the whole man concept. So you'd kind of divide them up into this 4 squares. And you would have good teammate, bad teammate, good operator, bad operator. And we would rather have someone that falls in the good teammate, so-so operator, than the great operator who's a bad teammate.
Yeah.
So we actually started to add that to our selection because before it was just, can they make it through buds? Are they studs?
Yeah.
Cool, get them to the teams. And there was having issues because people's personalities were selfish and all those different things. So we started to look at valuing, I would keep someone in the pipeline longer if they were a great teammate and they were just physically struggling a little bit. We'd give them a little bit more time to figure things out because they were good humans. But if they were the best performer, but they were horrible teammates, that was kind of a one-way trip out of the community pretty quickly.
Because you literally can't teach that, right? It's like really something you probably know as a child if you're just a good teammate. I mean, I guess maybe you can teach integrity a little bit, but at a certain age, it's like I think with that stuff, you're kind of like a baked product at that finished product.
It's a calculus of how much time do you want to spend it? Because like, could we teach somebody? Probably. But while I'm doing that, I'm neglecting everybody else that's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, like really dangerous, deadly missions that these people have to go on, it's not a risk we're wanting to take. And for a business, especially a startup, you just don't have, your time is your number one resource, your time and your capital. And anything that takes away from that time and that focus, you got to be really strategic about where you choose to take away from that time.
You guys are making me think about playoff baseball because I feel like baseball is just this unique sport where it's such a war of attrition that the team in the dugout almost needs to be better than the team on the field. Like not the team in the dugout, like people who aren't playing, but you need to actually get along and have this magical connection with your teammates, this selflessness, this camaraderie. And if that doesn't show up on the field, like you basically like will either burn out or you won't be having fun late into the season. So you just won't get that extra level of performance late into October. But baseball really does shine this light on like the team dynamics where it's more important to have a good team vibe than it is to have, a bunch of right-handed, left-handed pitchers throwing 105 and who are just nasty. It's like, you can pay for those guys, but you really can't pay for the heart of the team, which is priceless.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
If you look at the winningest team in the history of sports, it's the New Zealand All Blacks. And the reason that they're the winningest team is not because they recruit the best players. It's because of the culture that they keep as a team, where the culture is about what the team represents, which is the country. And if you could be the best player on the planet, and if you don't fit their system of being a humble teammate and putting the team first, they'll boot you off the team instantaneously. And that culture is carried, decade after decade by the players on the field. The coaches have very little to do with that culture because it's become self-regulating.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about at that elite level, that's the difference, is the minutia, right? Like once you get to the level of a professional sports team, you're talking about the 1% differences for the most part in those sports teams.
Yeah, I think they have, what is it, the no a-holes policy, and then the second one is like the sweep the sheds mentality.
Technically, it's no dickheads.
No dickheads policy.
No dickheads.
No dickheads.
Yeah.
I like sweep the sheds too, though, right? Where it's like if you're the best player on the team and you're not willing to sweep the sheds, like you just don't have a place on this team.
When I was a troop commander, I was very fortunate to be in charge of 3 platoons, and then we deployed. I got 2 extra platoons to take on deployment. And we had our 3 troop standards. Our troop was the 3rd troop, so 3 troop. and I blatantly stole 2 of the All Blacks key cultural components for our standards, and one was no dickheads, because if you're just a good dude, things typically work out in your advantage.
Yeah.
And nothing gets done by being a prick to people. It just doesn't happen. Relationships are key to mission success. And then the other one was, I didn't say sweep the sheds, but it was basically every place we go, we're going to leave it better than we found it. So when we go to the kill house, at the end of the day, we're sweeping up every single piece of brass, every single piece of dust that may or may not be ours, but we're going to leave that place immaculate. And it was less so of a calling card and more so of humility. You know, are we good at what we do? Yeah. Is there a lot of, you know, respect in the public for people in that community? Yes, but we're not too good to pick up our own brass.
Yeah. It's amazing how far that mindset will take you too. Just like these little things of like having integrity over like your own appearance, the appearance of like going to the kill house or something like that, cleaning up, just doing this stuff. I think it just affects you. It's just having pride in yourself. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it'll take you so far.
It goes back to that whole man concept that we were talking about for the selection, is just, you can be a good operator, but there's so much more to it than being a good operator. You know, are you a good teammate? Are you a good leader? Are you a good teacher? Are you a good mentor? Are you humble? Like all of those things really have to come into play if you want to be the best that you can possibly be at whatever your vocation is.
Yeah.
How do you think about the culture aspect that you've developed through the military and through your experience with the construction company in terms of building Primal Beef?
Yeah, culture is everything. It's the thing that you're going to fall back on when things get tough, and it's what you're going to leverage when there's problems that need to get solved. And for us at Primal Beef, our culture was centered around how do we give the customer the absolute best experience and best value that we can possibly give them. And every decision that we make is based around that principle of what is best for the customer. We know that our beef is world-class, but we want the entire experience for the customer to be a world-class experience. So when you go to the website, we want it to be like the easiest to navigate website where you can get your order quickly and feel good about it, which it wasn't. So guess what we're doing right now? We're changing it, because the feedback now is, and what we've seen is, the website is not giving people that world-class experience, which we wanted to give them.
Yeah.
So we're changing that up. Customer service, if there's anything that ever goes wrong with your order whatsoever, no matter what it is, one of the founding team is calling you to take care of that issue and make sure that you either get a brand new order, you get Primal points, which is our loyalty points, which is as good as cash basically for purchases. We're doing everything we can to take care of you. So our culture at Primal Beef, we want it to be something where you can take pride in ordering the beef, because you know you're going to be giving your family and your loved ones awesome, nutritious beef that was ethically raised, single source, so you have traceability, you know exactly where it comes from, providing American farmers with income, providing, you know, butchers, American butchers with income, giving back to my community through the partnership with the C4 Foundation and beef donations through there. But we wanted it to be an experience where you feel good about it, not just because the beef is great, but because all the things that you're doing along the way is going to support things that hopefully you care a little bit about.
Yeah, I love what you said about the founders personally handling the customer service complaints. We've seen it with Noble. I think we've probably driven over $50,000 in sales just from taking these customer service complaints and actually giving them a great experience, whether it's calling them, shooting them a text message on their cell, and figuring out how you can actually fix the issue from them. And then they're like, oh, wow, the founder's reaching out to me. He's actually a good dude that cares about me. It was an honest mistake. All right, great. Let me go buy on subscription now. Like, I see that there's so much alpha in these little details like you're talking about.
Absolutely. And the guy that takes care of most of it for us is Paul. And he's the nicest, most likable guy of all time.
Yeah.
He's way more likable than I am. It's impossible to have a conversation with Paul and not just feel like you talked with one of the best humans on the planet. And then you're like, oh, and this person is completely taking care of my order and making sure that I'm completely satisfied, and the beef's amazing, and we're donating back to the military. Like, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
At least in my mind, that's what I'm hoping is happening.
No, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So you strike me as someone that you seem like you're a guy that got out of the military and And it seems like you've done this amazing job of figuring out what the next mission is. That's something you talked about earlier. And so Harry alluded to it. So you were doing the construction job. You were COO there. You go to Echelon front with Jocko, probably a dream job for a team guy. You still work there. What was the actual Primal Beef story of being like, no, we're going to actually start a beef company and do this thing?
I knew I always wanted to do something that was mine. Actually, I didn't always know that. I think the experience of watching my two teammates, Garrett and Kyle, start the construction company was eye-opening. I'm like, oh man, they're doing something amazing here. They're providing jobs. They're providing an environment where everybody's super happy to come into work. And there's a lot of value in that type of being able to take care of people. So I knew I wanted to do something similar to that. And Echelon front is the greatest job literally that you could possibly imagine. And the connections that it has and the people that are there are like the greatest team of all time. And when I moved to the town that we're in now and met Paul, who's the ranch connection, it just seemed to me like it was almost criminal to just be keeping this beef a secret for just our community. And we wanted to expand it. And before I even talked to Paul, I called Jocko up and was like, hey man, what do you think about starting a farm-raised beef business? And, you know, being the ultimate entrepreneur that he is, he was just like, literally just told me, I'm in.
Yeah.
So from there, it was just starting the process. So I knew I wanted to do something that was going to be a little bit bigger and longer lasting than myself. And then hopefully one day, you know, something that I can pass off to my kids if that's something that they want to do as well.
Were there ever any moments where you, being a SEAL, totally qualified, that you felt like, oh shit, I'm like over my skis right now?
Oh, like literally every day. Like I didn't know, you know.
Like I feel right now.
Yeah, I learned more about beef, and I grew up on a ranch, but we were like raising horses and stuff. We weren't having any cattle, so I knew a little bit about livestock and whatnot. But getting to learn more about raising beef, what goes into good quality beef, how much of a difference the processing matters, how much a difference the dry aging matters, how much a difference how you butcher the animal matters, the individual cuts, all of those things. I didn't know any of that stuff going into it, but you know, I was confident that we would get it figured out, and I had good people that I could leverage, like Paul, who was very savvy in that industry. So one of the keys, I think, to being successful is just surround yourself with good, smart people. And something I've just been very blessed and fortunate around is I've always been surrounded by good, smart, hardworking people. And just learning to take advantage of, not take advantage of like I'm taking advantage of, but letting them do what they're good at, which is Paul's great at the beef. That's what he does. I think I'm pretty good at conveying what's important to us, being an ambassador for the brand, making strategic decisions, bringing good people on board. So just letting people thrive at what they're good at.
Yeah. Yeah, that skill set definitely comes through even in this conversation. And it's funny too, when you're talking about the mission, it's also important to have that mission that's so compelling that when shit gets hard, you have to just keep going because there's no other option. And the mission of bringing back the voice and of the American rancher to the customer and being able to connect people with the most nutrient dense product possible. Like, I don't really know of anything more noble than that, honestly. That's why we do the entire show that we do, because people don't even understand what is good beef versus bad beef.
Yeah.
85% of all beef at the grocery store is monopolized by 4 large packers. Like, I'm sure Jocko got that with Origin because the gene industry is completely screwed up, and it's the same thing with beef.
100%. And you know, you'd be hard to make a case that an animal has so much of a history with America outside of beef. You could say bison, but unfortunately we basically eradicated the bison through market hunting in the 1800s. But as far as America is concerned, like, we're a beef country. That's what the main source of protein has been for us since basically the founding of the country. And there's a very disturbing report that just came out a couple of weeks ago that said that the American beef numbers right now are at basically an all-time low, like a 50-year low. And there's so many different reasons for those, and they're not complex reasons. Policy is hurting farmers. People are not viewing farming as a glamorous lifestyle because it's not. It's a lot of hard work. So do you know what the average age of the American farmer is right now?
Isn't it like 63 or something?
63
like
years
that?
old
That's
is
crazy.
the average age of the American farmer. So traditionally what happened is, you grow up on a farm, you have your kids, somebody takes over the farm and it becomes this legacy thing. And that's not really happening. So we're at this kind of crossroads right now where for the first time, we're just not producing a whole lot of beef. And there's lots of factors that are being layered up on top of that. So what's the solution is you're outsourcing all this beef to different places from overseas. You're buying beef. Different conglomerations are the biggest beef producers. So you've got this kind of tragic instance right now where even though you have more ability for farmers to be able to connect with larger audiences than ever before in larger client bases, that's not being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So for us, we wanted to be able to kind of connect people with where their food's coming from. And that food is hardworking Americans who are literally pouring their heart and soul into giving you the best beef that they possibly can. And something that differentiates us is we're so obsessed with quality that could we do more volume eventually by opening up the floodgates and working with lots of different farms? We could. But knowing exactly what's going into that box matters more to us than the bottom line and profit does.
Yeah.
So being able to work with one farm where we know exactly how those cows are being raised, where when you order a box, your first box and your 100th box are going to be the exact same beef that's going into that box, that was important to us.
Yeah. And then, you're creating the most nutrient dense product possible for the hardworking American so they can take that product and get the energy from it and then go out and do incredible, badass things with their lives. Like that's the ultimate cycle right there.
100%. And then feel good about every step of the way. You bought it from a farmer who's raising that beef from its entire stage. You feel good about that. You're providing jobs to people at Seven Hills Abattoir, which is the artisan butcher that we partner with to do all of our dry aging and processing. And, that town, Lynchburg, fell on some hard times, and they're providing a resource and jobs to people in that community. They also have a work release program where they're bringing in people that made some bad decisions in their life, and they're giving them the opportunity post prison time to learn a new skill, to develop themselves, and to earn a living, which most people don't want to take that risk with people. So they can feel good about that. They can feel good about feeding it to their family because they know exactly what's inside that box, what all went into that. And then they can feel good on the backside about the fact that not only did they provide beef for their family, but because of our partnership with the C4 Foundation, they're feeding a soft operator and their family through their purchase as well. So we wanted to be able to give people good nutritional food to fuel everything that they have going on, but we wanted every piece of that to be something that they can hang their hats on with pride, that whole experience.
Yeah, that really comes through in the messaging and just like how you guys are approaching everything. It seems like the entire process is something where there's care just like baked into everything. Like even just you talking about the butcher, it's like, it's so cool hearing someone who's actually providing jobs for other people speak to the nature of that relationship where like you actually truly care about the fact that you're creating a job in the economy in Lynchburg, Virginia, which is, a relatively small town. It's not, and having those jobs stay in the US is huge too, or, it's not happening, in some other country.
We go down there very frequently and visit with the team down there, and you talk to, especially the guys that are on the work release program. They have a purpose now. They have a purpose. And it might seem weird to people to be like, well, they're grinding up beef. But that's not how they see it. They see it as they were given an opportunity to start a second life for themselves, to develop a skill, and they're pouring everything they have into that one little thing that they're doing because somebody, the guys that run Seven Hills, were willing to take a risk and bring them in when people were turning them away left and right. It's a pretty awesome thing, man.
Can you talk about the C4 efforts that you guys have? Yeah.
So C4 Foundation was started by a friend of mine named Mr. Keating, Mr. Charlie Keating, whose son was a teammate of ours, Charlie Keating the Fourth. So C4 is Charlie the Fourth. It's kind of his nickname in the SEAL teams. And right before my last deployment to Iraq, the team that we turned over with, so we took over Iraq from this team, was Charlie's team. And he was killed in the spring during an operation. And his father, to honor him, wanted to start something up, a nonprofit in his legacy give back to the SEAL community. And look, there's plenty of nonprofits that are doing good things for the military, plenty of them that are doing good things from the SEAL teams as well. But I really believe that the value that the C4 Foundation is providing to SEALs and their families is providing the best direct impact to the community. And that's why I wanted to partner with them, is because what they're doing is directly taking care of SEALs and their families. So there wasn't a whole lot of care taken on like the backside of a deployment for SEALs and their families. It's like, cool, you deploy for 6 months, you come back, you start the whole process over again, and your family's basically just taken through the ringer with that whole cycle of being in the military. So the C4 Foundation is totally built around resources for the family, so the family unit can strengthen their bond and then just weather the storms that come with being in the military and being specifically in a soft unit where there's just more asked of you. So they have this huge ranch out in California. It's 500 plus acres, and they've basically made a retreat for SEALs and their families where they can come out there and just get away from everything, reconnect with nature, eat good food, go through these different programs, different mental programs, health programs that they have out there catered for the families when they come. But it's basically just a big resource to make sure that mentally and physically the operators and their families are as taken care of as they can possibly be. So when we started Primal Beef, we knew we wanted it to be more than just giving good quality, like the best beef you're going to get to the customers. We knew we wanted to be able to give back to our community as well, specifically Jocko and Mai's community. So I reached out to my first platoon chief, is actually now one of the guys that's helping run the C4 Foundation. His name's Dave. And I told him about what we were doing, and I said, hey, would you think that C4 would want to be able to partner with us? And the scheme was basically, how I viewed things was, anytime someone purchases a box, we, through no cost to the customer, we're not hiding that cost in the box or anything like that, we set aside a cut of beef that we then donate to SEALs and their families through the C4 Foundation. So now they were all about it. Mr. Keating is the man. Anything he can do to provide a better service to the SEALs and their families, he's going to do. So very graciously, he partnered with us. And now anytime someone places an order with us, we set aside a cut of beef, not from your box, from our own inventory. And then once a quarter now, if the amount gets big enough, we'll do it monthly. But right now it's once a quarter. We give all of that beef donations to the C4 Foundation, and they distribute it to SEALs and their family members. And so far since August, we've only been doing this since August, we've been able to provide over 5,000 meals to SEALs and their families through the connection with the C4 Foundation.
It's unbelievable.
That must be the most motivating feeling ever, where it's like every time this business grows, I'm able to feed more and more families through this amazing organization.
It's the best feeling you could possibly come up with. And right now, we basically split the beef. Half of it goes to the East Coast, half it goes to the West Coast, because that's where the SEAL teams are. They're basically bifurcated between San Diego and Virginia Beach. And I live close enough to Virginia Beach where I load up the truck and I get to go down there and like literally hand it out to my teammates, hand it out to my buddies, and see the impact that it's making on them and their families. And it's awesome, man. It's huge. And that's all made possible by the people that place orders and support our business.
I feel like that's one of the things that a lot of people overlook when it comes to starting a business, is you can have these missions that are so much greater than profit, sales, the amazing outcomes that can happen if you end up selling a business. It's like these little meaningful things that actually like steer your focus, like the fact that you have a mission that's centered around something that's so much more than just, selling beef. It's actually providing meals for SEAL team members and their families is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, what legacy do you want to leave behind? Is it that you made a lot of money off of a company? Congratulations, man. Lots of people do that.
Yeah.
But can you do something a little bit more enduring than that? Can you not only provide for yourself and your family, but can you provide for other people as well? And, if there ever comes a time where we think about selling Primal Beef, if anybody wanted to buy it and in the relationship with the C4, you can piss right off, man. We're not even interested in looking at something like that, because to us, that's really the most, aside from giving the customer the best possible beef that we can, that's as important to us as making sure that we can take care of those people who are out there putting themselves through the grinder and their family through the grinder on a daily basis for our security.
Yeah. Makes me think back to what you said earlier about acknowledging the fact that there's room for improvement for the Primal Beef website, but you weren't going to let that prevent you from getting started. And I think about how so many people over-index thinking they need this perfect thing to get started versus like having really good energy and a good plan and just being like, we're going to be good enough for now. We're going to figure it out and build this thing over time. Could have, if you tried to be perfect, that's 5,000 families that didn't get fed. If you know what I mean? If you didn't launch when you guys launched.
Yeah, I've actually never looked at it through that lens of the metrics of the families that have been fed, but that's absolutely true. And you can't let, perfection be the enemy, basically. Like, just good enough to get it going and then learn from your mistakes and move forward and make the change. And listen to your customers. Listen to what basically they're asking you to change and shift around, and you'll be just fine. And we knew the quality of the beef and the customer service, we know we're going to be okay as a company. And then it's just learning along the way at how we go from where we are now to doing the amount of business that we can do with the amount of cows that we can produce. And the byproduct of that is going to be more Americans are going to be eating good beef, great beef, nutritionally dense beef. And it's going to be providing for American farmers. It's going to be provided for American jobs, and it's going to be feeding our nation's military, which that's a win for literally everybody involved.
100%. The other thing that I love that you said too was the transparency around, because I think I said, oh, it's grass finished beef. And you're like, no, it's grass fed beef. And then we supplement it with some grains, some fruit, some other stuff. I think that on just the transparency and knowing your rancher is so much more important than a grass finished label, where there's so much greenwashing that's out there, where if you know the rancher and they're taking great care of the animals themselves. I mean, I eat a ton of grain fed beef and I feel absolutely amazing. So I love the fact that you're admitting that, because it's about transparency. That's the most important thing.
100%. And look, there's enough farmers that are out there doing grass fed all the way through if that's what you want to do. For whatever reason, if that's your bag, then man, there's so many farmers that you can support that are doing that. That's not our model for a couple of different reasons. One, I raise my own grass-fed cattle on my own property, and I just don't really like it all that much.
Yeah.
I think the beef tastes very differently. I know now that nutritionally, what we know is they're almost identical, as long as they're eating grass for the majority of their life. When you talk about, at least for us, finishing them on the produce, the fruit, the vegetables, and the distiller's grain, that excuse me, that mash. They're only doing that for a couple of months. They're eating grass the entirety of their life, and they're still eating grass while we're supplementing it. So all the nutrient density that's coming in is coming from the grass, and then it's getting augmented a little bit by what we're finishing them on. So, there's less fat in grass-fed, grass-finished, if that's what you're looking for. Fat's also flavor. There's also good things that come with fat. There's also certain less nutrients in grass-fed, grass-finished over kind of what we do. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. But if you want grass-fed, grass-finished, don't buy it from a big box store. Get to know a farmer who's doing that and buy it from that farmer, because you're going to be supporting them, and it's going to be a better product because they're going to be caring for that animal. And if you want, a truly unique experience where you're trying something that you've never had before, which is the grass-fed and then the fruit finish, try us, and I promise you will not be disappointed.
Yeah, we've had it.
We've been smashing. We've been smashing it for the last week. We've got the office stocked up, and in the backyard we're gonna put a Sisu sauna, a couple cold plunges. Then we're getting some more grills out there too. So we're just gonna start buying your beef boxes on subscription. That way, whenever we have people over, we can just throw down on the grill.
Sounds like paradise. A little steak, a little hot. A little cold.
That's why we're going to have you back out there.
Please do.
That's what we need. Yeah. Sorry, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to ask, it seems like, or I was going to say, it just seems like you're doing what you're uniquely called to do right now. Could you envision yourself doing anything other than what you're doing right now?
No. And the reason is all these in Echelon Front allows me to do this as well. It allows me to be with my family, which is really all I care about.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if I wasn't a good SEAL, I could live with that as long as I was a good husband and a good father. And the blend of working for Echelon Front and starting this up has allowed me to spend quality time with my family, which just life in the military, it becomes quality time, not quantity time for sure in the military, because you're just getting pulled in 1,000 different directions, as you should be, to make sure that you're properly trained and your team's properly trained to come home safe. But it takes a toll on the family. And I'm in a point in my life right now where the only thing that I really care about truly is being the best husband and being the best father that I can be. And Echelon Front allows me to do that. And Primal Beef allows me to do that, and allows me to also involve my family and hopefully build it out to someday something that, you know, myself and Paul and Declan and Jocko, the 4 founders, can involve all of our families in, if they want it to be, you know, a legacy, if you will.
I think that's what life is about for a man. I don't think there would be a cooler feeling than your kids being so passionate about Primal Beef that all 4 of you guys have kids that want to end up taking over the business. How cool that would be.
Well, I can tell you they're passionate about eating it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I
Which
can't,
is good.
I mean, my kids, you guys don't know how spoiled you actually are. My kids, like, they're just like, oh, steak again? Like, come on, Dad. So they're definitely passionate about eating it.
Yeah.
And they love being involved in the process, but it would be nice, no pressure, but, you know, if one of them wants to step up and take it over one day, that would be amazing.
Yeah. I loved how what you said, too, with Echelon Front. You guys are able to go to, like, the nicest steakhouses around the country. But when you have beef like you have at home and you know how to cook it the way you like it, I'm like, it's really hard to find a steakhouse that makes steak better than what you're going to make yourself.
It's always just disappointing.
Yeah.
And it's still good
is,
steak,
dude.
but it's always just disappointing because the quality control that goes into the size of our operation, you just can't replicate that at any of these steakhouses. And the other fact of it is, you know how you like your steak cooked
Yeah.
too. So if it's in a cast iron skillet with butter and salt and pepper, you can do that. If it's over an open fire, you can control that. We're at a steakhouse, they're doing really high quality steaks at volume. Whereas I don't have to worry about volume. Well, I mean, I have 5 kids, so technically it is a certain amount of volume that's going through, but I can control how I make those steaks. So
Yeah.
I'm always happy to have a good steak, but it's always a little bit like, I'd rather have my own.
Yeah. So your family is 7?
7.
So if with a family of 7, are you throwing them on the grill or are you going cast iron?
It depends on what it is. So, I mean, obviously burgers, like I'm opening up the pellet smoker and like everything's going on there. If it's barbecue, if it's brisket, if it's our beef ribs, I'm firing up the smoker, the big offset smoker, you know, feeding big chunks of, you know, blocks, pieces of wood in there, logs, and I'm working that sucker all day long. If it's steak, for me, I really like the cast iron skillet, and it's just very easy and everything's quick to clean up. It takes me maybe 10 minutes total to go from pan on the stove to steaks complete.
Yeah.
And then we're sitting down afterwards, eating dinner together as a family, which is important.
Yeah.
And then cleanup super easy too, because I take the pan over to the sink and I put some water on it. It cleans itself, and then I don't have to worry about it. I can just sit down and enjoy spending time with the family.
There's something about just a quick sear that gets the job done. I don't know. It's like, just throw it on there real quick, 4 minutes aside, boom, boom.
Done. And
Good.
that, you know, that the technical thing is like the Maillard reaction that happens with the beef, where it's that caramelization. And the more contact with the cooking surface you have, the better that reaction is going to be. So when you look at a steak that's on like a grill, you're only making contact with that beef where the slats are. Everything else is dropping through into the fire. Whereas with the cast iron skillet, that entire steak is making contact with there. So the butter's getting baked in, the salt's getting baked in, the pepper's getting baked in, and everything becomes the crust. To me, that's kind of the gold standard for the steak, is like every bite has that nice crust on top and then just perfectly, you know, rare, medium rare tenderness underneath.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting kicked out of Mafia HQ if you're doing anything above medium.
Done.
Medium rare, you're done.
It pains me to think that might be something that people do with Primal Beef. But at the end of the day, it's America, and you cook your steak the way that you want.
I've been liking a blue cheese crust on top of my steak lately.
I do love blue cheese.
Have you been to Salt and Thyme in town? Have you heard of it? It's a steakhouse butcher shop. They make this, it's a steakhouse, half of it's steakhouse, half of it's butcher shop. And they make these compound butters. So they do a marrow butter, they do a blue cheese butter.
Yeah.
It's the best butter you've ever had. And we just buy it by the jar and just throw it on everything that we do.
You can't beat it. I mean, like butter and steak, it's just the greatest thing of all time.
A little salt.
Those steakhouses, if you ever have one of those apps where you're looking at what is cooked with, I forget the name of the app, but it basically tells you seed oils.
Seed oil scout?
Yeah. they're all cooking it in seed oils.
They're all cooking in seed oils.
It's insane to me.
Yeah.
Insane to me.
Well, part of it is like, I guess the smoke point is really good. So
Yeah.
these highly trained chefs are like, oh, they're taught me in culinary school to cook with this
Crank it
seed
up.
oil. And they also think it's healthier too, which is
Yeah.
insane.
No.
Then when you had a steak and beef tallow, you're like, there's no going back.
It's just the best thing ever. My wife
Yeah.
does not the biggest fan because it does stink the whole house up.
It does.
But steak and beef tallow is just, and then you're just dumping the rendered fat
Yeah.
all over literally everything.
Yep.
My kids, they would lick the cutting board if I let them with all the rendered fat that's
Yeah.
on that cutting board afterwards.
How old are your kids?
My oldest just turned 13,
Okay.
and then my youngest is 4. So I have 3 boys and then 2 girls.
Are your boys on the raw milk train?
So actually we're in the talk of buying like a Jersey cow right now.
Nice.
It's a lot of work. You know, you're out there every day doing it, but we're to the point with the farm where we can probably bring that in and we can manage that now. So we'll probably start doing that. They drink a lot of milk.
Is there anything cooler than seeing your kids being able to grow up on the farm and actually like develop some skills for themselves and grow interests in different animals and things like that?
There's literally nothing.
Yeah.
And the one that's taken to it the most is my youngest daughter, Maeve, who's just like the most endearing thing of all time. But it's because it's all she's known. So we moved to our farm about 2.5 years ago. So she was like 1.5.
Yeah.
So all she's known is farm life, and she is the quintessential farm girl. Like if you can't find her, it's because she's outside in the chicken coop. I say coop. We have a big open area that's electrically fenced in, so we can move the chickens around periodically. And she's just in the big open area with the chickens, just hanging out with the chickens, playing with the chickens.
Yeah.
If I'm giving hay to the cows, she has to come in the tractor with me to give the hay. She's barefoot literally everywhere she goes at all times. So it is such a fulfilling thing as a father to be able to see your kids just enjoying being outside versus we don't even have a TV in the house. Like there's no TV in our house whatsoever. So if they're just outside having a good time or inside, you know, hanging out with each other, playing games.
Yeah, it makes me think about like this incredible life that your kids and your daughter have. And I think back to a lot when I lived in New York City for 4 years, and there's like besides Central Park, there's no real grass in the city. And I remember walking downtown and like looking at the Little League fields, and they were like just all AstroTurf fields. I'm like, these kids don't even get to experience grass versus like the experience that you're talking about where your daughter's like literally in the chicken coop barefoot every single day. Yeah. How good that probably is for your microbiome, your immune system, everything.
It's the best. And you know, when we first moved out to the farm, you know, we were in San Diego for 15 years, and my wife and I were sitting out on the front porch in the rocking chairs one morning, and I looked at her and I said, I can't tell you the last time that all I heard was a bird, because that's all I was hearing. Sitting on the rocking chair was just the sounds of the morning, sun coming up, and the birds are starting to sing. And in San Diego, there's always noise.
Always.
It's the cars coming by. It's a helicopter overhead. It's your neighbors being too loud because you're all on top of each other. And just that inoculation of the senses where you're just used to just hearing noise all the time, and then going out to the country and just being like, I literally don't hear anything. This is amazing.
Yeah. We moved out to Bastrop for like a few months.
Oh, hell yeah.
It was sick.
fun.
Yeah.
But the first thing I noticed was the noise pollution and the light pollution were basically zero.
Yeah.
So when it got dark out, it was like 6 o'clock, and you're like, oh, there's nothing to do out here.
Yeah.
Other than just like maybe read a book and then go to bed.
Yeah. Which is great. We have our house, and then we have like our family rec barn, maybe 40 yards behind the house. And excuse me. That's where like the gym is. That's where my office is. We have one TV up there. So like if we ever want to watch a show, it's a very deliberate movement to where like you have to go together as a family up to the rec barn to kind of, you know, watch a show, whatever the case may be. But at nighttime, if I need to go get something from the barn, I mean, it's pitch black out unless there's a moon.
Yeah.
You can't see in front of your face. It's amazing. And you look up and you're like, oh my goodness, there's actually stars in the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's so good for your circadian rhythm because you're like, all right, well, I'm just going to go to bed at 8 o'clock because it's completely dark and I don't have a TV to keep me up either.
Yeah, and there's no light pollution, so like you're sleeping better. There's no noise pollution, so you're sleeping better. There's fresh air. I mean, it's just amazing. When we first moved out there, you know, just probably former lifestyles type stuff, being in the military, your sleep cycle was totally jacked up. And after moving out there after a couple of weeks, I started to fall into a really good sleep system. And I didn't change anything. It was just the environment itself changed.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we talk about is how it's like these unsexy things are the things that move the needle. And even just getting your sleep into a good spot, you're a totally different person just by doing that one thing.
Anybody who has kids knows the effect that sleep has on people. My kids are completely different people if they got sleep versus if they didn't get sleep. And the older they get, the more they can manage it. But like if my little one was up a couple times during the night, it's like stand by the next day because she's just going to be a different mood than she would be if she got sleep.
Yeah.
It's going to be highs and lows throughout the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about that a lot with food too. It's like we're programming our kids, their day-to-day feelings are basically centered around how much sleep they're getting and the quality of food they're getting.
Oh yeah. And you look at what's a normal American breakfast. Let's load them up with this cereal that somewhere along the line we convinced ourselves was nutritious.
Yeah.
And then we're sending them to like the most boring environment imaginable, which is most schools.
Yeah.
And then we're saying, sit down at a desk after we've pumped you full of all this like insulin producing cereal. And then we're shocked when like, that's not fun for them whatsoever.
And then we've got some Adderall for you too.
Yeah. And we got some
pay
Adderall.
attention.
Yeah. If you can't pay attention, here's some pills you can take. So
that's just like the perfect storm for kids being all over the place.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. You look at where we're growing up, where my kids are growing up, we're so blessed because it's a, small-ish community, lots of like-minded families, big families. So we go to church on Sundays and we have 5. We're like a medium-sized family.
Really?
Where
That's
we go.
awesome.
Yeah, like, unbelievable. You look in the parking lot and it's like sprinter van, because they have to have that. And all the kids are sitting there in church, perfectly, taking everything in. The moms are beautiful. They're well put together. The dads are sharp. The kids are looking sharp. And then they're all just running amok together afterwards. But, they're not looking at screens. They're not doing any of that stuff. They're just being kids. And my wife coaches our high school girls soccer team where our kids go to school. It's the elementary school up through high school. And her first away game, she comes home and she's like, I had to give the girls, high school girls, my phone to use to call their parents to tell them what time they were going to be home because none of them have cell phones.
Yeah.
I think there was 2 of the girls on the team that had cell phones, but because they were the oldest of 7 siblings, they were driving their siblings to school and back. So like they had a phone to keep track basically. But like nobody else had a phone. They're just out there being kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's encouraging that you can find communities that are like-minded, that are doing things the right way. Like you're talking about going to church, big families, everyone's put together. It just seems like, a lot of people in our age range, in this millennial demographic, they don't think they need to get married. They don't think they need to have kids, and they don't think that they need God, which is like, and Harry and I were thinking about this a few years ago. We were like, all the people we know believe in God, they're married, and they all have a bunch of kids. There has to be something to that.
Yeah. I mean, you look at kind of, we know what makes people successful in life. It's not there's no secret. Like we know, if you look at literature and data, what makes people financially successful, emotionally successful. It's, do you believe in something bigger than yourself? Do you have a family? And do you have community?
Yeah.
That's kind of like the keys to success, but somehow we fooled ourselves into thinking that it's like a family somehow holds you back from being successful and somehow kids are a burden instead of being like the most fulfilling thing that you could possibly ever do with your life. We have it backwards, but I think people are starting to come around.
I think so too.
Yeah.
There's been some people, if you follow on social media, that I wouldn't have ever thought would necessarily have started to believe in a higher power. And they're starting to say things where I'm like, oh, this person's on a journey.
Yeah.
This very smart, very educated person that probably 5 years ago was very counter to this is now starting to say things where you're like, oh, he's or she is, they're on a journey right now. And it's only going to end up in one spot.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing. Like it seems like a lot of people are now publicly, whether they were or were not before, talking about like reading their Bible or like maybe even starting to attend church, which I think for a lot of people who are in the public light, that's a very hard thing to say in current times. But it does seem like the tides are shifting. And a lot of it has to do with like this post-COVID era. I feel like trust has been dissipated out of kind of our standard systems, and now people are just looking for other groups, small community to put their trust in.
The only place I mean, obviously outside of God, that you can put your trust is in your family and then your community.
Yeah.
Like the government's not going to save you on a personal level. It's just not going to do that.
Yeah.
It's something that you've got to be able to do yourself and through community. And I joke around with my wife, like it's a good thing we have a beef business because the amount of meals that we provide to moms that just had babies in our community, like every week my wife's doing 2 or 3 meal train drop-offs. And the entire community's doing that because they value that relationship where someone has a baby, everybody in the community wants to support that family. You know, government's not dropping off a meal for those people. It's their local community that's doing all of those things for them.
Yeah, and I think women are realizing how important animal product consumption actually is for their fertility, their hormone cycle, et cetera. Like our podcast is primarily male, but the protein company Noble is primarily female as our customer base because it's, you know, beef protein isolate, organs, colostrum, collagen. And there's Heart and Soil did this documentary called Nourished, which talks all about animal-based moms that got pregnant and had kids. And they show, the doula shows a placenta of an animal-based mom that was eating a ton of red meat versus the vegan placenta. The vegan placenta is like this dull pink color. And then the mom that's eating all the steak, it's like a dark ruby red, like rich color.
Poor kid.
I know, right?
Poor kid that's inside there.
Well, we'll have to send you that because it's like, it's one of those things you see it and you're just like, what the heck?
Yeah, please do.
It's wild.
Yeah, it is crazy. And it makes 100% perfect sense. And then what happens when that baby comes out is if the mother is capable, you know, they're breastfeeding and all of the nutrients from that diet is what's going directly to nourish that kid as well.
Yeah. We love this type of conversation too. I mean, something I've been thinking a lot about is, especially on the internet for men in their 20s, there's like this notion that if you want to be successful, you need to be single. And you know, you shouldn't get married young or whatever. And I think it's complete BS. When you find the right woman, she'll like set you on fire and push you towards your mission more than you could even know. And I think for you, you'd mentioned you got engaged to your wife like 4 months after knowing her, and which is interesting because I think the divorce rate in the teams is like 90%.
It's pretty high. Yeah. It's pretty high. Now, I will be the first one to say that as much as I love my community, people make some bad decisions in my community. And sometimes if people's decision-making ability in their personal life matched their professional life in the teams, everyone would be like the most squared away people of all time.
Wow.
But I was fortunate enough to have very good examples of good, strong families inside of the teams. And when I met my wife, there was no doubt that she was the person that I wanted to marry. So we dated for 4 months and then I proposed and she said yes. And then just training schedules and whatnot, you know, 9 months later we were married. And then almost a year to the day after our first anniversary, our first son was born. My son Ronan was born. So, and I was doing all those things when I was in the military. And I deployed 6 weeks after he was born. Wow. And my wife, you know, I deployed for almost a year. It was 11 months, that deployment. And my wife was at home with Ronan holding the fort down. And to hear her say it, she's like, it was challenging, but the experience of getting to have Ronan or not have Ronan during that 11 months, she's like, I was so glad to have him there with me the entire time while I was overseas, you know, doing those things. So it's immature is what it is. And you can't blame them for it, I don't think, because what is the message that they're receiving from popular culture, from the world, which is, you know, procreate with as many people as you possibly can.
Yep.
Don't get married till you're in your late 30s, you know, live your life. Like marriage is some kind of drag on you, and it's the exact opposite of that. Like if you want to talk about being fulfilled as a man, it's tough to argue that you're ever going to be as fulfilled as when you're filling that role as a husband and a father. And look, some people will never physically have the role of a husband or a father, but you can get that sense through something else. Be a coach, be a youth minister, be something where you're filling that void. But it's immature, and it actually makes me sad for them because I'm like, you're going to waste the best years of your life pursuing things that you think is going to bring you a lot of joy and fulfillment, and the things that are going to bring you the most joy and fulfillment, you're actually just glazing over those things.
I think Brett and I will both agree that the podcast has been the best decision we've ever made in the past few years. Just professionally, it's gotten us to have conversations like these that just give us hope. Like honestly, these types of conversations just fuel us and inspire us. Like that there are people out there who are mission focused, doing the right things, trying to leave a legacy, like all these important things that aren't really talked about in the mainstream, just like truly fuels us. And just, we're so appreciative of your time. We know how valuable it is. You got a business, you're working for Echelon, you got Jocko as a boss, so I'm sure you got your time is precious. So we really are so appreciative of your service and just for coming on the show.
Well, it's an absolute honor to serve, guys. I mean, literally, when I say the teams gave me everything, like they gave me everything, and every single second I spent in the military was the best time of my life. And I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to come on and, you know, talk with you, get the word out about, you know, the beef business and all of those things. And you know, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
We appreciate it, Sean.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. My pleasure.
Thanks, Sean.
Cool.
Cool.
Sweet.